First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this video, wherever you may be listening and tuning in from and watching this recording. We want to thank you all for your time and your interest and your commitment to making a difference in our world and in our society and in our communities. First and foremost, HCWC would like to thank you all for joining this event, Breaking the Silence in Domestic Violence, a conversation with Black men. HCWC has been serving victims of abuse in Hays and Caldwell County since 1978. Today, we have a panel of speakers that will be discussing domestic violence, an issue that has far too long been seen as a women's only issue. And HCWC, I know personally, has been committed to doing whatever they can to making a difference and involving men. In fact, I was one of the first men that actually worked as an employee at HCWC, and then later actually sat on the board at HCWC for about 8 years as well. And my name is Curtis Clay, and we are glad to be here with you today. I would like to take this opportunity now to introduce our distinguished panel. We have a panel of four gentlemen that we are really, really glad to have a part of this conversation here today. First, we have Alex Banbury Jr. Deacon Alex Banbury Jr. is a San Marcos native with deep ties to Central Texas community. He is the grandson of the late Harvey Miller, a local community activist, and son of the late Chris Banbury, who was just one of the sweetest people you ever want to meet. I had the opportunity of knowing her and working with her for a while. So it is a pleasure and honor to meet you and have you on this panel with us today.
Thank you.
Chris she was one of those folks who served as one of the first crisis counselors for the Austin Police Department from 1985 until her retirement in 1995. So needless to say, Deacon Banbury,
that cooler out there.
Your roots run deep. So thank you so much for being a part of this panel.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Our next panelist today is Dr. Harlan E. Ballard. Dr. Ballard is the Outreach, Assessment, and Retention Coordinator and Veteran Liaison for the Office of Disability Services and lecturer for the University College at Texas State University in San Marcos. Dr. Ballard joined Texas State University San Marcos campus in August 2018 after serving 34 and a half years in the U.S. Army. He served in support of Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation Enduring Freedom. Thank you so much for being here with us, Dr. Ballard, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this, and an acknowledgement to Ms. Joni Wilson and the Hays County Women's Shelter.
Yes, sir.
And all the work that they do. So again, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here. Our next panelist this afternoon is John Bonner. John is the director of TRIO Student Support Services and has been at the University of Texas at San Antonio since 2014. He provides leadership, guidance, and supervision for the programming and activities of the TRIO Student Support Services program that is specifically tailored for students who are first generation, income eligible, or have a documented disability. John is passionate about supporting students as they achieve their academic and professional goals. He also wants to use his influence to bring positive change through music and serving his community. A man after my own heart. Music is very, very important to me as well. So perhaps we might be able to do some collaborating in the future on some writing, some music. So that would be great as well. Our final panelist this afternoon is Dr. Travis. Good to see you, sir. Dr. Travis is a professor and MSW program director at Texas State University in the School of Social Work. His research, practice, and consultancy work emphasizes healthy development over the life course, resilience, and civic engagement. He also investigates creative arts, especially hip hop culture, as a source of health and well-being for individuals and communities. He is the author of the book, The Healing Power of Hip Hop. Dr. Travis, thank you for being a part of this panel as well today. All right, gentlemen, the series that we are part of, Breaking the Silence, the first question that I have for you all today is, why do you think there is silence around domestic violence, specifically in the Black community? And if you will, let's start with Deacon Banbury to take that first. Why do you feel that so?
The reason I feel that there's a lot of silence around domestic violence in the Black community is we have always been taught to pretty much, your business is your business. You don't go out and publicize and let everybody know. I know growing up, it was like, what goes on in this house stays in this house. You don't go and let everybody know your business. So that's one of the main downfalls of the Black community, is that we are not taught to really open up and speak about stuff that goes on within the house, because we don't want to be looked down upon, to look weak. I mean, we're already struggling enough with a lot of the other things that we have to deal with just by being Black and, stuff like that. So we don't want to publicize what's going on inside our house. So we kind of keep it inside the house.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Ballard, would you like to reiterate on that question as well?
Yeah, I would have to concur. In the African American community, we have been conditioned to internalize things, to keep things amongst ourselves within the family. Yes, we know things like domestic violence and incest and alcoholism as an addiction, and all these other psychosocial issues do exist. But again, we've been conditioned, we've been trained, if you will, from the moment you come out the womb, that, just as a gentleman just said, that what goes on in this house stays in this house. Our business and our business. Unfortunately, the sad but reality is it's not just our business, and it doesn't just stay in this house, because as we all know, we may be impacted internally within the home, but once we leave the home, that creates a ripple effect. And it affects not just our home, but it infects the neighborhood, the community, the country at large, and primarily our school systems.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Bonner, would you like to add to that? And again, the question is, why do you think there is silence around domestic violence in the Black community?
Definitely. And I have to just kind of piggyback off that idea of what happens in this house stays in this house. And I think the idea of keeping things silent, as far as silence equaling protection, because the reason that we're keeping things in this house is because the outside world, can come and attack our community, can come break up our home. So if we use our silence and keep things inside, then that's going to protect us from the outside world. But of course, as we've come to learn, that silence actually endangers us even more. And it doesn't really allow us to heal and actually get the protection that we want for our families. And so in turn, it seems as though the silence that we've used to protect ourselves is what is kind of damaging the home. And so now, to reverse that curse, we really need to open up and talk about these issues in order to get the protection and the love and security that I know that the Black community wants and Black families want. So just to kind of piggyback off that, I think it's now time to adjust the language of keeping things silent, but now, opening up and getting exactly what we're trying to resolve done.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Travis, what would you like to add to that question?
Yeah, such profound points that everybody's making. I think on the flip side of the, keeping things within the home is also the flip side of mind your business, right?
Absolutely.
You see things going on, you deal with you, let me deal with mine, right? And staying out of other people's business, I think, is something that comes up a lot as well. Another point, there are lots of things I think contribute to this, but another major one I think is because of how strong our Black women are and how much they carry, that a lot of times there may be some shame in speaking up and not being able to live up to this idea of how strong they are, that it's weak to be able to, not take care of things on your own. And so there may be some shame or some stigma, around speaking up when support and help is needed. And just the last point I think is if you are a victimizer, then you're not going to say anything because it's like the air you breathe, right? You may be even reinforced by some of that behavior. And so there's nothing to speak up about because this is just how it is. This is how we do things. And so those are a couple of things that I think stand out to me.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate all of your responses and answers to that question. I mean, I know that it's one of those things where when I think about our world and our society in general, a lot of us as men overall don't talk about this particular issue, but it seems to be even more so in the Black community. In our communities, we see that even more so. And I think you've all touched on a lot of those reasons why overall. So thank you for that. The next question that we have for you all, and we will start with Dr. Ballard on this next question. And that is, what messages do Black men and boys receive about what it means to be a man?
It's a great question, Mr. Clay. Wow. So much comes to mind. I want to take just a brief moment to process that, because I can answer that question historically. Okay. And then I will answer that question to where I see that there is a transformation. Historically, what it has meant to be a Black male, an African American male, is to sow thy seed, to be promiscuous, to be rough and tough, rowdy guy, a big guy, to hold your emotions in. The big boys don't cry. But unfortunately, as we grow older, we realize that that's a bunch of malarkey, that big boys do cry. And those big boys that fail to cry are going to internalize these emotions that will come out in the form of a mental illness or a stress-related illness, stroke, heart attack. It can lead to addiction, to drugs, alcohol, sex, domestic abuse, if you will. Right. So what I see men of color and primarily, African American or Black men, is that we are, if you will, getting more in touch, with who we are. Some would say our feminine side or the sensitive side, but we are coming to the realization that there's nothing wrong with being a man and having some emotions. There's nothing wrong with being a male and being a gentleman. There's absolutely nothing wrong with accepting a simple no, I'm not interested, as opposed to saying, I hear you say no, but, and then continuing on what unfortunately is a vicious cycle of domestic abuse, domestic violence, sexual harassment, and things of that nature. So I see that it is a slow, but it is a a change, a transformation for the betterment of not just our people, but mankind in general.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. The messages, what messages do Black men and boys receive about what it means to be a man? Eloquently stated. I appreciate that. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Bonner?
I agree with a lot that was shared. Something I was thinking about just as a millennial kind of caught between several generations right now is that something I know that my fathers grew up and grandfather grew up, this idea of Black men and Black people, in general being strong and taking the ideas of masculinity equaling this strength that men have. Which I think is changing the ideas of masculinity, femininity, emotions and feelings that are usually tied to being something that's weak or feminine or something that is for women. Those lines are becoming more blurred with the ideas of social media and what is being shared on social media as we're seeing men in different lights and in different communities that are still men, that are still, or men, people who are presenting in masculine ways. I just think it's a very diverse conversation when it comes to the ideas of men and masculinity and those different identities. And I think that it's important that we address it and that we bring it to the forefront of people's attention and learn to discuss identity. People have multiple identities within themselves. And I think part of what, as we've been internalizing, is people having multiple identities. And then it, of course, like he's saying, it lashes out, it bleeds out in some way, in some negative way. And I think it's important that we cope and deal and find healthy ways to discuss these ideas and ensure that people are safe and in a free space where they can share that. Again, not keeping what's in the house. We have to get past that and be able to help people share who they are and what they want to be. And I think it ties in deeply to this idea of what is being a man, or what do we deem for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Again, the messages, what messages do Black men and boys receive about what it means to be a man? Dr. Travis, your thoughts? We don't hear you, Dr. Travis.
I think we see a range of messages, but I think since the earliest time, we battle against the pervasiveness of two dominant messages, and that of being hyper-masculine and hypersexual. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not that there aren't other messages out there, it's that those are the ones that are blasted in the media and these stereotypes that unfortunately we have to, everything everybody else has said, we have to sort of wade through and figure out where we stand in this sea of stereotypes that are bombarding us. And I feel like that's where the challenge is. There are rewards for, presenting this way and being the hardest thing in the room in certain settings. And those rewards can get people caught up sometimes. So I feel like battling these dominant stereotypes of masculinity and sexuality are the things that makes it very challenging for Black men. But it's not at the absence of other messages, because everything that John was talking about is very present as well. Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Deacon Banbury, what are your thoughts on the messages Black men and Black boys receive about what it means to be a man?
One of the things that I know is that, we are taught to be the providers of the house. And a lot of times when you're not able to live up to that standard, that's when I think the breakdown starts to happen, and so I know that's what I was taught. You're the provider. You need to be strong at all times and stuff like that, which leaves it open for you can't fail. So So then you're always holding stuff in because you don't want to cry in front of your, you don't want to look weak in front of your family or weak in front of the Black woman or in front of your woman or anything like that. So I think that right there, it's very damaging to us because we're taught to be one way, but then when we act or another way, it breaks us down. So we don't know how to express that. So like I said, I was just taught to be, you have to be the provider, you have to be, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's just, I think one of the breakdowns of.
Absolutely. One of the things that I remember when I first moved back to Central Texas from Southern California, and one of the things I got involved with was youth football. And I remember a father coming onto our practice field at one point and grabbing his somewhere around 9 or 10 years of age son, grabbing him by the front of his shoulder pads and pulling him to the side and saying to him specifically, "Boy, you're hitting like a girl.
Yeah,
you're hitting like a girl." And the thing, and that really stuck in my mind because first of all, I pulled him aside and we had a conversation about, this is my time with your son. I know this is your son, but this is unacceptable for you to come on this field and grab him and start to chastise him, punish him, and degrade him.
Yes.
And even more importantly, the message that you're sending to him that girls are inferior to boys.
Exactly.
And we had that conversation, but that message is sent a lot of times without us thinking about that whole thought process overall. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you all also. Yes. Let's move into our next question. And our next question is, why do you think it is important for you to speak up on this topic? Why is it important for you or for us as men to speak up on this topic? And we'll start with Mr. Bonner.
I think it's important. It kind of goes back to our theme here about silence and the damage that silence can do when you don't address really important issues such as this. And I also think it's important that people see Black men talking about this topic specifically and not hiding away from it. And myself, as a young Black man, a young Black married man who's not involved in those kinds of activities, I think it's important to see different faces and different representation of people who are not afraid to dive into it, who are not afraid to call something that's wrong, truly wrong, and that I think it shows support for those who have been victims of these instances. And I just feel like it goes back to that idea of we've been silent about this. And, in 2021, if you can't speak up about what's important, then you're missing the boat altogether. So there's no better time to start and continue this conversation about something that is, killing our community. And we need to bring life and light to this topic in order to bring resolution. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Dr. Travis, why do you think it's important for us to speak up on this topic?
And this question, it just lights me up, man, because, there's so much suffering that goes on that does not need to. The reality for so many, particularly women, is staggering. The numbers are just out of control, and the ripple effects that it has on families, and it's intergenerational. It doesn't stop at that relationship, and we have to talk about the impact on families and communities is just so significant. And on the flip side of that, if we can break this cycle, there's so much joy and intelligence and kindness and generosity and brilliance and love that men have to offer, their families and their communities and the workplace. And that needs to be the stereotype. That needs to be the norm, because it's true, right? It's not, you're not making it up. It's not absent. That's the reality. That's the reality that we have to model and talk about and share and show and reinforce. So it's just so important. And I just appreciate y'all having this conversation.
Well, again, we appreciate you and you, all of you, for being a part of this, because this is where it starts for us. Dr. Ballard, your thought processes on that particular question. Why do you think it's important for us to speak up on this topic? Did we lose Dr. Ballard? Okay, let's go ahead and go to, I believe, Deacon Banbury. Did we have you answer that question, or did we start it?
Not yet.
Yes.
But I think it's very important that we talk on this topic, because we need to normalize it. We need to, in this cycle, we need to be able to make it where men feel comfortable. We feel comfortable talking about this and not keeping it in. I know that's one of the biggest things. I think if men, you always hear about women going through domestic violence and stuff like that, but if men don't want to talk about it because we don't want to, to appear to be weak or anything like that. So I think as men, we need to start to open up about it and say, yes, I was a victim of domestic violence. I grew up in a household where there was domestic violence. I knew friends, I had cousins, just stuff like that, and not hold that in, because unless we sit down and actually have discussions like what we're having here, then the cycle will just continue on. So we have to make this where us as men, we feel comfortable to just sit down and say, this is what's going on. So that's why it's important to bring up topics like this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for those responses. Dr. Ballard, can you hear us? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and move forward with our questions. I think about this question myself, and I know we have a time frame here, but more important than getting this done, I think it's actually having a really good conversation. And I remember specifically when I was working as a sexual assault prevention educator and dating violence prevention educator for HCWC, and I happened to be walking down a hallway at a school at one point with a coach and another teacher. And as we're walking down that hallway, I see one young man with another young lady, female student, and he basically has her pinned up against the locker, and he's putting his finger in her chest and that type of thing. And I'm sitting there and I'm walking by, and I know this coach sees it. I know this teacher sees it, but yet they don't say anything. And I could not allow myself, having 4 children, 3 of them being daughters, to not say anything. I had to say something to that young man, because if I don't really say something about what I see, what am I really saying to him? That it's okay. Keep on doing what you're doing. And so we have to speak up. We have to speak out, and we have to get to that point to where people understand this is not okay and it's not normal. Our next question is this. What should we be teaching boys and young men about relationships? And let's start with Dr. Travis on that. What should we be teaching boys and young men about relationships?
I firmly believe that positive and supportive relationships are the most important thing in the world. And every relationship you have is the ingredients to health, well-being, success, and it starts with every interaction. Verbal, like what you say, how you communicate, verbally, non-verbally, how you interact with everyone, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a parent, somebody else's parent, a coach, a friend. Those relationships are the key. And we have to teach our kids, particularly our young men, what that looks like. We have to model it. There's no time off. There's no breaks.
Right.
Everything we say and do, they're watching. And so we have to be able to model that. We can't just tell people what to do. We have to We have to role play that. We have to model it. We have to how we treat each other. So I think we have to teach in words and in actions the importance of positive, supportive relationships.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that response, that answer. Deacon Banbury, your thoughts on that? What should we be teaching boys and young men about relationships?
What I would, my main thing is that relationships is a partnership. Mm-hmm. That no matter if, like Dr. Travis was saying, I mean, no matter what type of relationship it is, you know, it's a partnership. You have to go in not with the mindset that I'm the dominant one, mm-hmm. that this person is going to be equal. I mean, because if you go into your relationship, you can build better if you go in equally. And this person's bringing in this, but we just have to teach these young men that just because the woman is the weaker vessel and you're the stronger vessel, you don't go in and you don't dominate this relationship. Mm-hmm. You come in and you bring your part into it. She brings her part into it. And then you build that relationship together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, sir. Mm-hmm. Mr. Bonner, your thoughts on that?
Just to piggyback on this idea of positive relationships, which I feel like positive relationships are really a currency for life. You know, like that's something that you want to store up in your bank. Mm-hmm. Is having so many positive relationships and positive interactions with people. And I think healthy and positive relationships are built on the idea of empathy, are built on compassion, which is not something that maybe is shared with a lot of young men, but empathy for people goes a long way. And it opens the door for you to build so many healthy relationships when you can look at something and someone and put yourself in their shoes, mm-hmm. And open yourself up to the idea that this world is not about you and it's not always about you. There are other mm-hmm. people in this world and there are other needs that you can provide if you're willing to sacrifice self in order to have that positive relationship.
Absolutely.
So I'm really glad that we're talking about this, and it's just so important that we instill these values in young men, and of course that we model, we do what we say we're going to do. We don't just talk it, and that, you know, because again, I feel like representation is powerful. You know, if they see me doing the things that I'm telling them to do, mm-hmm. it's going to have that impact and it's going to plant that seed. When they go and they're in a serious relationship with their partner, they're going to go, yeah, I remember, you know, Mr. Bonner, he was always so kind. He was always so willing to go out of his way. You know, he was willing to sacrifice self in order to preserve a positive relationship. So
absolutely.
That's a critical part of things that we should be sharing with really anyone, but specifically mm-hmm. young men for sure.
Absolutely. I don't see Dr. Ballard. I don't know if he can hear us or not. If he's Dr. Ballard, are you there? Okay, we're going to move forward here. When I think about that particular question, you know, what should we be teaching boys and young men about relationships? And I think the biggest thing, I know for a long time, working at HCWC as a sexual assault prevention educator, dating violence prevention educator, working at the Texas School Safety Center at Texas State University, all of those years as well. It was always important to me to make sure anytime I had an opportunity to speak with young men, truly understanding what are the characteristics of a healthy relationship. And that was one of the things that we would do is really talk about, okay, let's talk about some of the things that those characteristics we want to see in a healthy relationship. And of course, they will list several things, you know, respect and honor and loyalty and, you know, support and all those things. But the one thing that in most cases that would never be brought up, and I would always reiterate, is that we also want to add on that list of characteristics in a healthy relationship is compromise. It can't always be my way. You have to be willing to give as much as you receive. Those type of things are very, very important when we start talking about having healthy relationships with anyone for that matter. So that is very, very important that we understand what are the characteristics of a healthy relationship versus an unhealthy relationship. And it was interesting because one of the things that a lot of students would say, especially in high school and college, when we talked about healthy characteristics, sometimes they would actually list jealousy in those characteristics. They would say jealousy is a sign of love. And a lot of folks believe that. And we all know that that's not the case. It's not true. So this is why it's important that we have these conversations, okay? We have one other question, and we'll go ahead and continue moving forward. And that question is, what role do men play in ending domestic violence? And we'll start back with Deacon Banbury on that. What role do men play in ending domestic violence?
A major role. A major role, because you find that most domestic violence that happens in the household come from the men.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to continue to have discussions like this. We need to open up more. There's just so much I can say about this. We need to realize that it's okay to be as we go back like to the first thing, breaking the silence, it's okay to be soft, you know what I'm saying? You don't have to be hard all the time. It's okay to fail, because a lot of times we find out when we do stuff like that, we tend to take our anger out on other people because we feel that we failed and we're less than. And so we just need to open up more, talk about it, talk about our issues. One of the things I would like to say is that, we also taught that the Black woman is strong, the strong Black woman. But I think that has hurt us because we go in there thinking that, okay, they can take it because they're strong Black women. But to also realize that, okay, we're also weak men, not in a bad way, but we have some things that we need to work on. And we just need to, like I said, open up more and discuss. And I think that plays a major role into ending domestic violence.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that response. Appreciate that. Mr. Bonner, what role do men play in ending domestic violence?
I think to piggyback off of the idea of men opening up and even something like this is really exposing the topic. And, for me, it makes me think of, we really have to turn the light on some of these issues, because we're silent and we're in the dark about it. But when you turn on the light, you can start to really see things for what they really are. And I think conversations like this are putting the light on something that is destroying our community. But I think if we shine this light on it, it's going to expose it. And we're able to really see, okay, this type of language is destructive. These kinds of actions are bringing down the household. These things that are happening are not benefiting your household and the Black community as a whole. And so I just think it's vital that we, and of course, like I keep saying, representation matters. Seeing men talking about an issue like this is important, and keeping men in the forefront of this conversation to, again, expose people to the idea that you don't have to do something that you've seen or experienced or not experienced. You can, treat people well. You can, and you want to treat your family well. And I think that is just exposing it and bringing it to light. And so I think it's important that we continue to do that and continue to be in the forefront of this conversation.
Absolutely. Dr. Travis? We lost your volume.
Thank you. One piece that maybe haven't touched on as much, I want to zoom the lens out a little bit in thinking about what we can do. I think what comes to mind most often is kind of physical violence, thinking about the psychological violence and the emotional abuse and not contributing to the exploitation of.
Mm-hmm.
I work a lot in music, and I talk about how empowering music can be, but also at the same time how exploitive and risky and misogynistic.
Yes.
And I think that within the culture, we need to make sure that we are speaking out and not contributing to the exploitation of women. And then out of the culture in kind of mainstream society, speaking out against the way that women are portrayed and letting people know that it's not okay, because we understand the impacts that it has. So I think we can play a role in that regard as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know we lost Dr. Ballard a little while ago, and he was certainly a great contributor to this panel, as well as you all have been. I truly commend you all for taking the time to joining us today and being a part of this conversation, this topic, and we hope that it will be something that will continue. And I know the folks at HCWC, again, Joni's there working on this special project now as well. But I would hope that they will call each of us again, and that we can continue to move forward with this. We hope that when the time comes to where we can actually come together and bring people together, that we can actually do this again as well, because the need is there, and we just have to do more. And I think, from my point of view with this, I think we have to be willing to hold each other accountable. We have to hold each other accountable as men, as brothers. We have to hold each other accountable. When we see things going on that we know is just not right, we got to speak up, and we have to speak out, and we have to do something. And I know I might be preaching to the choir right now, but we have more work to do. Our voices have to become larger. They have to become bigger, and thinking about that next step. And again, I know that Joni will be reaching out and HCWC will be reaching out, but I want to truly thank you all for your time and what you're doing. It was a pleasure and honor for me to be a part of this process, and I look forward to the next time. It's so good to see your faces here. Dr. Travis, it's been a while, but thank you for being a part. Deacon Banbury, again, appreciate you tremendously, man.
Thank you.
Chris was she was awesome. She was awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Mr. Bonner, a pleasure. Thank you so much. We look forward to the next time. And with that, I would like to say have a great evening and a great 2021. Stay safe, stay productive, stay involved.